Quick warning, today's video does contain subject matter that is sensitive and viewer discretion is advised. And if you want to send a story my way, go to astheravendreams.com/submit or check the links down below, and of course, thank you. I have a personal story that really messed me up as I got older and realized what had happened. But when I was young, I was just kind of confused and curious more than I was scared. What had actually happened had to be explained to me when I got older so that I had a better understanding of the situation. But like I said, when this happened, I was around 6, and nothing about any of it had actually registered in my little brain. Besides that fact, I actually have a very clean and vivid memory of it, which is probably why it's messed me up mentally. It's absolutely haunted me as I got older, which is why I've had to talk through this all with my mother and actually had to get professional help for it. I'm not trying to hype this up. It really left me with a mental scar. So, this happened back on Thanksgiving in 1992. Like I said, I was 6 at the time. And around then, we always went out to my grandparents' house in the middle of nowhere, Missouri, for the holidays. I was the kind of kid that loved to go out to their home because they had a lot of land, and they raised a few different types of animals, like chickens, goats, and a couple cows. Because I loved the animals, specifically the smaller ones, I was kind of scared of the cows. I would typically spend my time outside with them, playing with them, feeding them, talking to them, just basically doing whatever my little brain could think up in the presence of the goats. It sounds kind of weird now, but it made sense back then, I think. On this particular Thanksgiving, we were all meeting up at my grandparents' house, and when I say we all, I mean the entire family, which was my parents, myself and my little sister, my aunts and uncle with their 8 kids total, and on top of that, my dad's cousin Danny was also joining us. Which it was interesting to me then because he was someone in the family that I had never met. He wasn't around much when it came to family gatherings, and I wasn't sure what to really think of the guy. He was a bit awkward and kind of dismissive whenever you would go to talk to him pretty much about anything. It was fairly obvious that he really didn't want to be there, and I didn't understand that because it was Thanksgiving. That meant it was family time, right? Which meant you were supposed to be happy, right? I'll get to the explanation of that later, but for now, I figure it would be best to actually go over what had happened. The night was seemingly normal. I got to play with my cousins, we watched the parade on TV, and we all got ready to have a huge dinner. My family always had a tradition where, before we carved the turkey, we would all say something that we were thankful for that year. And when everyone was done, we would eat. As we went around the table, everyone was saying they were thankful for their wives or families and loved ones, and other various things that were fairly heartwarming, sure. But then it got to Danny and the whole room just kind of went silent. I remember the look on his face when it was his turn, and the look on everyone else's face when he just kind of sat there after a moment in silence. After several awkward moments of nobody speaking, he kind of perked up and said something like, I'm thankful that I get to look forward to all this food, which caused some laughter and chuckles, and we all moved on. We all ate our food, probably way too much, especially me, because I always did. The holiday kept going as it should have, and everything seemed to be okay. My dad's cousin was still a bit standoffish, but he almost seemed like he had opened up to us somewhat after we had ate. That is, until one of my cousins, who was only a year or two older than me, asked why his wife wasn't there with him. I remember that same awkward silence as my aunt ran over and grabbed my cousin, apologizing profusely and saying that she had told him not to bring it up. And I remember the tense feeling in the air when he said it was okay, but then said that he was going to step outside for a minute just to get some fresh air. Obviously, I didn't understand then why it was such a big deal, but it apparently was something we were not supposed to mention. I think now is a good time to go ahead and get the explanation out of the way. Danny was a drug addict. I'm pretty sure it was heroin or something strong like that. He and his wife were both hardcore into it, and they had tried to get clean several times and had failed each time. However, around July in that same year, his wife actually ended up in an OD and died while he was unconscious, lying literally right next to her. Apparently, and obviously, this had devastated him as they had been together since they were in high school. And they had been married for several years. When this happened, he spiraled hard into a depression for, again, obvious reasons, but then he decided to try to make it right by getting clean. He went into a rehab facility and he got off the drugs, but was struggling to make it without the woman that he loved. Yes, he was clean, but he was an emotional mess, and he was struggling a lot with everything. My dad thought it might be a good idea to invite him over for dinner with the family, since we were all going to be there, and they didn't want him to just be alone. I know that this is a super sad story, and being an adult that's married with a kid, I can totally understand how painful it must have been for him to go through all that. And that said, nothing could have prepared me or really make me understand how things played out from there. After we were all done eating, I wanted to go outside and play with the goats, something I had been really looking forward to doing since I had gotten there. It was getting a bit dark, but since the barn was close to the house, my parents didn't really have a problem with it. I went outside, as excited as I could possibly be, and I went over to the barn where the goats were. I remember going out there and petting them and hugging them. I really loved those goats. I was playing with one of the kids, feeding him weeds from the ground, petting him, talking to him about nothing and all that, when out of nowhere, there was a loud bang noise, like a firecracker, and the goats all ran away. I didn't know what it was, and I just remember standing up and smelling something weird. I now know what it was, but at that point, I just remember it smelling bad, and me being really confused as to why someone would light a firework in the barn. If you haven't pieced it all together by this point, my dad's cousin had actually shot himself. My grandpa, he used to keep a shotgun in the barn in case someone or something tried to get onto the property to hurt his animals, namely coyotes. Apparently, right before I had gone outside to play with the goats, Danny had found the gun and made the hard decision to end his own life then and there. A decision that I don't think anyone in my family expected or could really find a further explanation for. The man was severely depressed. He had recently lost the love of his life and was probably thinking more clearly than he had in a few years. I don't think he wanted or expected any of us kids to find him or see it, and I think it was just bad timing and a bad place for me. But I remember the scene in very horrible detail. I won't describe it. I would never put anyone through that. I just remember standing up, seeing what had happened, and my mom running outside and grabbing at me. The whole time, I'm yelling at her about how cousin Danny hurt himself. I remember just screaming that at her several times, thinking that they needed to go back and help him. It hadn't registered in my little mind that he was definitely not alive anymore. Looking back, it's actually pretty clear why this messed with my brain as I grew up. There's not a person out there that wouldn't have some sort of PTSD after this situation. I was the only kid to see what happened, and the only one to see the aftermath, thankfully. As I got older, I started having these really weird and vivid nightmares, and I had to sit down and talk to my parents about them. They were shocked that I actually remembered him and that night, because I was so young, but when I told them what I was seeing in my head, they knew that it had traumatized me. I actually went to see a therapist after that, and I've been working through things as I've matured and turned into an adult with a life of my own. I just want to end this story by saying, to anyone out there that is struggling, please know that you are important, and going this route is not an answer. It may start to feel like the solution, but it's a very permanent one to a very temporary problem. Life is hard, but it gets better, and there are those out there that love you. Please, stay strong, and thank you for reading. I have a quick story that actually makes me cry almost every time I think about it. Mostly because it's one of those things that hits you really hard and makes you kind of think about the finality of life. I know that's vague, but it'll make sense when the story's done. This all took place a few years ago, in 2017. That year, about a week before Thanksgiving, my mother had passed away. She'd been diagnosed with cancer about 9 months before that, and she did her best to fight it, but in the end, she didn't make it to the end of the year. Obviously, this Thanksgiving was going to be incredibly difficult on all of us, as we would have to get together, prepare the food, and spend time together with an empty seat at the table. We wanted to make sure that my dad didn't have to do anything, so we all came to the decision that we would have dinner at my house. Me and my sister would prepare it for our families and dad, and we would make the most of it to honor Mom's memory. She was the one that had been preparing Thanksgiving dinner since the day I was born, and while we had helped her here and there, it was always her day to shine. As much as there was to do, I think she honestly loved making the food for everyone, plus, it got everybody together, so it was important to her. This year, like I said, was going to be a challenge. We had to do the work and try to keep a positive attitude. I got to see Mom a lot more before she passed than my sister Nell did, mostly because she had moved a few states over and had 2 kids. She wasn't able to drop everything to come visit, so it was incredibly rough on her. I was able to say goodbye, and I was able to see Mom to the end of her days, so I was more at peace with the whole thing. She was doing her best, though, and I applauded her for that. The week came, and it was about as tough as I expected. Nell and her family showed up the night before and set up the spare bedroom so they could stay through the weekend. After they had gone to bed, I was in the living room watching a movie when I saw Nell come downstairs, and she told me that she was struggling to sleep. She kind of had a look about her like something was bothering her, so we kind of talked for a while. She had mentioned that she was worried that she was going to mess everything up and how she'd felt like Mom was depending on her to do this right. I told her that I would be there to help her and that she needed to not be so worried. Then we talked about how she had been having dreams about Mom every night, and how it was really causing her to feel depressed. I tried to talk her into looking at it more as a mom was there with her than something that she should be sad about. I don't think I was able to do a whole lot to cheer her up, but I tried. The next morning, we got to work on everything. We spent the entire day preparing things exactly as Mom had written them down, to the letter. We wanted to make this perfect for our dad, to show him that, while Mom may be gone, she had taught us well, and that she would always be a part of the family even if she wasn't there physically anymore. Much to my surprise, everything was perfect. We got the entire meal made and it all came out as it was supposed to. My dad complimented Nell and myself repeatedly, telling us how great everything was. After the meal, Nell asked if she could talk to me in the other room for a moment. So we walked over to my bedroom, and she shut the door. As soon as she did, she burst into tears and hugged me as tightly as she could. It was a bit of a surprise, but I hugged her back, and I just told her that we did an amazing job. And that's when she opened up about the whole situation, and why it was weighing so heavily on her mind. She mentioned that there was a reason she was struggling to sleep the night before, why she felt she needed to come talk to me about everything, and it wasn't just because she was feeling the pressure. She pulled her phone out and opened her voicemail app and put it on speaker. It was a quiet message, but as I listened, I could hear exactly what she was trying to show me. There was a bunch of static, but through the static there was Mom's voice saying, "You can do it, Nell." She said that a little before she went to bed. She had a new voicemail on her phone, but there was no missed calls. She listened to it, and it made her want to break down and cry. It was an absolute mystery what that voicemail was. I don't really have an explanation for it, other than Mom was trying to give her some encouragement from the other side. I'm not huge into the paranormal or anything, but this absolutely hit me hard and made me have to rethink my position. We never told anyone else about it, and Nell still has the voicemail saved. We've since made it a tradition for our family to get together at my place for Thanksgiving, and this year will be the 5th time that we've done this. I know that if Mom was still here with us today, she would be very proud of us. This story takes place well over a decade ago. I had just turned 19. I was fresh out of high school with no idea what it was I wanted to do, and I was trying to make some easy cash. So, I took a job at a local, bigger named pizza place. Because this story involves employees and happened at an actual location, I'm not going to name the brand. Just know that it's large enough that most of you have probably eaten there, or at the very least, seen their commercials. This specific franchise that I worked for was owned by a man and a woman that had apparently run it for almost a decade, and were super well known to the community. They were active in charity events, they were well liked by those that lived in the area, that is, if you didn't work for them and were part of their fancy social circle. When it came to running their pizza place, they were the most degrading people to talk with. Everything that you did was wrong, everything you did needed to be redone, and if you got on the wrong side of the husband, he would have you come into his office, which was a repurposed storeroom, and would scream at you and berate you until he decided that you got it. I'd seen a number of people quit immediately after having one of these meetings, honestly, and I don't blame them at all. All of this is to set up that these people were terrible managers and genuinely treated their staff like garbage. Treating their staff like garbage and genuinely not caring about the people they employed included being open every major holiday, and then not paying us extra for working said holiday. And if you were to call in, you would be written up and have your hours docked as a punishment. On top of this, two of their employees that always seemed to work every single holiday and had to work almost every shift together were Derek and Adam. Derek and Adam were actually the twin sons of the owners, and they were 21. Being their twin sons, I feel like it actually makes it worse that they would put them on the schedule to work on the holidays. Aren't holidays supposed to be about family? Well, apparently not for this family. They were fine with making sure the boys were never home for any of their holiday festivities. I was another one of the employees that always had to work the evening shift with them, and I was also one of the youngest employees, so I was forced to work all the holidays with them. These boys were decent enough workers, but they were also a pain in the back end to deal with. I mean that in the nicest way. They were fast on the pizza lines. One was typically a cook, and the other cut and boxed and worked the front end, but they hated each other. I have never seen twins that seemed to be at each other's throats so much, and it would typically end up with them yelling at each other over something incredibly stupid over and over again in the back. Most of the time while we had customers dining in the front. There was even one time that they actually ended up in a fist fight just past the threshold of the dining room, and we had people calling the police and screaming. Yeah, it was nothing shy of a mess. So now you know the place, the owners, and the two employees that were involved in the actual situation that happened. The overall event took place on Thanksgiving of 2005. We were, of course, open, which, in my opinion, was the dumbest thing that has ever happened in the history of pizza establishments. Do you know who orders pizza on Thanksgiving? Nobody, which was evident by the fact that we had maybe 4 orders from 5 p.m. to close, which was midnight. The staff that night consisted of me working on the prep line and doing dishes, the brothers, 1 driver, and 1 person working the front register. So a total of 5 people were there, and the fact that we only had 1 driver told me everything that I needed to know. That night was slow as hell. I barely had to wash anything or even make a pizza, so it was pretty much just sweep and mop and wait for the clock to tick down. We did get a last-minute order at somewhere close to 10 p.m. It was a decent-sized order, something like 3 pizzas and 2 breadsticks. I have no idea why somebody wanted this much pizza on Thanksgiving, but I also really didn't care. I got the pizzas all put together, got everything in the oven, and got it ready to go. The first pizza came out of the oven, and Derek grabbed it. He used the rocker knife to split it, like normal. And then I heard Adam say something under his breath. Typically, between these two, that meant that something was about to go down, they were going to start yelling, and we'd all have to sit back while they got whatever BS there was off their chest. Derek turns and asks what Adam's problem is. He then starts yelling about how Derek was cutting the pizzas wrong. From this, they started seriously screaming at each other. The whole time they're sitting there and fighting over how to cut the pizza, the items are starting to line up on the belt from the oven. I lean over, and I see that one of the pizzas was pretty much now on top of the other pizza, which was a major problem with those ovens, and that meant I was going to have to remake it. I politely tried to interject into their argument and tell them that Derek needed to grab the food out of the oven before it overcooked or got worse. But they just kept yelling at each other. After a few more times of trying to cut in, I'd had enough and finally just yelled, "Would you take the damn pizza out of the oven?" Derek reached over and grabbed the pizza and breadsticks as soon as I finished yelling, and immediately Adam started saying something about how he would just screw it all up anyways. This is where things exploded. Derek turned around and decked Adam, knocking him to the floor. While Adam was scrambling on the floor trying to figure out what had happened, Derek grabbed one of the pans of breadsticks from the oven with a mitted hand and slammed it down on Adam's face and just held it there. He was seriously shoving his oven mitt-covered hand into the middle of the breadsticks to hold this super hot pan over his own brother's face. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever worked at a pizza chain, but those ovens that have conveyor belts, the ones that cook your pizza in around 8 minutes, yeah, they get around 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Compound that with the fact that the breadsticks had been in the oven for extra time, and you can assume that the metal of the pan was just as hot. We also used thick pans for the sticks, so they held the heat even longer. At this point, I'm literally just kind of standing there, watching Derek burn Adam's face with the 400+ degree pan, and I was honestly not sure what the hell I was supposed to do. Like, I thought that I should run over and grab Derek and pull him off, but I was a scrawny dude compared to these two, and he would snap me like a twig if I tried to intervene. Thankfully, our delivery driver was a bit of a bigger guy and had the same thought that I did, to pull Derek off of his brother. He wrestled him off and pulled him to the ground, and then started shouting at me to call 911, which I immediately ran to go do. All in all, Derek got put in cuffs and charged pretty heftily, mostly because the attack did permanent damage. Adam's face was seriously damaged on the right side. It was burned to the point of hefty scarring, and he had to have grafts to fix part of his cheek. On top of that, he actually lost his eye from the attack. Apparently the pan had hit his actual eye and there was no way for them to repair it. I didn't work there for too much longer after that, mostly because that was just one of those things you don't really get over. To the best of my knowledge, Derek is still locked up, and Adam actually took the place over when his parents decided to retire, which is good on him, I guess. I know I wouldn't have wanted to stay in the place where my own brother scarred me for life, on Thanksgiving of all days, no less. So this was the collection of Thanksgiving stories. I hope you all enjoyed this. These are some fantastic stories. A huge thank you to everyone who sends their stories my way or lets me use their stories from various sources. Thank you so very much. Really do appreciate it. Allow me to say that I am thankful for each and every one of you. Even if you dislike my channel, that's fine. I'm still thankful for you. If you've ever listened to more than a second of my content, I am thankful for you. Because of all of you, I am where I am today, doing what I'm doing today, and I am happy. So, thank you. Let's continue this tradition of being thankful for things by putting something that you're thankful for in the comments. I'd appreciate that. If you want to. Never expected, but always appreciated. And I would love to see what all you guys would be thankful for this year. So, if you want to. Anyways. I just want to say thank you to everybody again for watching. If you enjoyed, please do hit that thumbs up button. If you're new, subscribe to the channel. You can also leave me a comment, like I said earlier. Join channel memberships, Patreon for $1 a month, early access, special stuff, all that good stuff. You know what it is. Supporting the channel, etc. Yeah. So, I don't want to push too far into it. Just, again, thank you. And I hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving if you're in part of the world where you celebrate Thanksgiving tomorrow on Thursday in November. Regardless, I hope tomorrow is a great day for you, and I hope I will see you on the next video. But, Until then, friends, sleep well.